For this module, I'm back in the application or the project we worked on in the last course section. And you can find my state attached to this video so that you can start right at the same point as I do. So it is just the code we wrote over the last lectures. And one thing we constantly had to do in the last section or throughout this course was that we always had to run node app.js to start our, app or our node application with that file. Now, this is certainly okay and not too much work, but it actually is possible to define some scripts in a Node.js project that can help us with tasks like this. We can also use them for other tasks, but especially for this, they can be useful right now. And for that, we have to use a feature we didn't use thus far. We have to use NPM. NPM stands for Node Package Manager, and it is installed together with Node.js. So you don't need to do anything, you got this installed already. Now we will also use NPM to install some additional third-party packages to our project soon. So packages that are not included in Node's core, so not part of Node's core modules. But we can also use NPM to initialize a so-called Node project or to add some extra features to it, to be precise. Because we obviously already got a Node project here, but now in this project, in a terminal navigated into this project, you can run npm init. Now, this will not delete your code or anything like that, no worries. Simply hit enter and you'll be prompted with a couple of questions here. It'll ask you first of all for a name of your package. And for now, you can simply translate this with project name. Now, you can pick any name you want. The part in the parentheses here always is the suggestion, the default it will pick if you don't choose your own name. So if I just hit enter here, it will take that default. So you can basically do that for all these questions. For the description, you can leave that empty. Then it will have no default text either. But you can also enter some text like complete Node.js guide. This is what this course is. And then define an entry point with app.js, for example. You can leave the test command empty, leave that empty, keywords, you can choose some if you want. You can put your name into the author field, though this is also not required. And you can also choose a license, but if you don't plan on sharing this project publicly, this also doesn't really matter. So with this, what you get is this package.json file. And there you also see all these settings or configurations you just set up. And you can, of course, edit them there too. So if you had a typo in your description, you can just edit it here. Now, this is using the Json format, which is a special kind of data format, which basically looks a lot like JavaScript objects. And it pretty much is based on that. There's one important thing to understand, though. The keys are always put between double quotation marks, and so are the values, except for numbers or arrays or true or false, which are not put between these. But that's too much for now. We can ignore that for now, just so that you understand what you got there. It's basically a configuration file for your project. Now, what does this configuration file give you? Well, let's clear the console here. With this configuration file, you see that we got a scripts section there, which has one default script that won't do anything for now. You can add your own scripts here, and I will tell you how to execute them too, of course. For that, let's add a comma after this test script and add a new script name, which has to be put between double quotation marks. And there, let's name it start. Now, start is actually a special script name, as you will see in a second, so make sure to type this correctly. And then between quotation marks, you type a command that should be executed. So this is a command which you could also type down there. And there we always had to type node app.js. So let's now put that between these double quotation marks here. Node app.js, like this. With that, save that file. And then you can run npm start. Start is a reserved name, and this will always look for such a start script here. And if you do that, it will, as you can see here, just execute node app.js. So it does the same you had before, but now you can always just run this command instead of running node app.js. Not that much of saved characters, but a few at least. And it's also good practice because if you ever share this project, it's pretty common that people just have to run npm start and that they don't have to guess which of your JavaScript files is the entry file. So you can quit this with Ctrl+C, of course, as always. And I mentioned that this would be a special script name. You can add more scripts also without using a special name. You can indeed choose any name you want. Just make sure that you always wrap the name in double quotation marks and that it does not contain any blanks or white spaces. So for example, we could have start-server. Now this can also run node app.js, so it will do the exact same as this script, and therefore it's of course redundant, but I want to show you something. And now, if you try running npm start-server, you'll get an error. You basically get an error that this is not a known command. And indeed it isn't, because just typing the script name here will not work. Start just was a special case, as I mentioned. Indeed, for normal scripts with your own custom names, you have to run npm run and then your script name. So npm run start server will now also start the server. Now, as I mentioned, this is of course redundant. npm start is way shorter, but I want you to understand how you can add your own scripts. Now, if you worked with something like Angular or React or Vue or any modern front-end development workflow, you will have seen that you use such scripts a lot to trigger build workflows for your projects, for example. And indeed, you can use that for all kinds of tasks you want to execute, but for now, we'll not dive deeper into that. And if you haven't worked with Angular or React, that's also no problem. You will see what I mean later in this course when I explore Node's functionality as a build tool a bit more. For now, let's just use that npm start script to start our application conveniently. So in the last lecture, we added a script to start our application, and this is nice to know that we have this scripting functionality. Now, with such a package.json file available, so therefore with this being a managed Node project, you could say, we can also do one other very important thing. We can install third-party packages. Because a typical Node project looks like that. You have your local project with your code, obviously, and you use a lot of core Node packages, like the fs package or the http package we're already using. But often this does not suffice, and in the next course section we will install one big third-party package actually, because you typically have such dependencies, third-party packages. So you want to use some functionalities, some code, which you didn't write on your own, but which is also not included into Node.js. Packages could help you with parsing incoming requests, validating user input, anything of that kind. Now, we will use Express in the next lectures, or in the next module to be precise. Body Parser is another package we'll use throughout this course. And there are thousands of packages available that offer all kinds of utilities you can add to your projects so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. These packages are available through the NPM repository. That is a cloud package repository where all these packages live, and you can conveniently install and manage them via NPM. Remember, that tool that shipped with Node. And this is exactly what we will do now to install a first little utility package that will speed up our development workflow. Because right now what we have to do is, whenever we change our code, we have to quit the development server with Ctrl+C and restart it, right? So if we have it running with npm start now, remember, this is our new command to start the server. And I would change something here. Like, for example, here I fixed that /head, right? Whenever I do this, I have to save this. And for my change to have an effect, I have to quit the server with Ctrl+C and restart it. Now, this is a bit cumbersome because we just want to be able to type and then hit save, and it should automatically restart then, right? That would be a great workflow during development. And to achieve this, we have to install a third-party package that gives us just this functionality. Now, how do we add such a third-party package? We do that with the help of NPM. And there we get the install command. So just as we had run to run one of our scripts, install installs a third-party package. Now, how do we install it? First of all, we have to know the package name. And if you're wondering, well, how do I know the package name? Well, that comes with courses like this, experience, or by simply Googling for certain problems which you want to have solved, and all of a sudden you find a thread where some package is mentioned. Now I can tell you, for this auto restart mechanism, there is a package called Nodemon, written like this. By the way, you can always search for npm and then the package name if you know that name. And you will find an entry on npmjs.com. Now this is the package page basically, where you find a description, installation instructions, usage instructions, how to configure it, because most packages give you an easy way of using it and then always give you configuration possibilities. You see how popular the package is, what version it's using, if there is an external homepage, where the source code can be found if it's open source. So you find a bunch of stuff here. Pretty useful. You also see how many versions are existing, and by default you will always install the latest version, by the way. But let's go back to installing it before we dive deeper into this whole npm thing. So we want to install it, and this command would install it, but don't hit enter yet. You can define how this should be installed, because packages which you install can be divided into development packages, so packages which mostly help you during development, and production dependencies, so packages that help you for the app as it's running on a server. For example, Nodemon would be a development dependency, because we only use it during the development process. Once we install our app on a real server, we don't need it there. The real server, which is running somewhere in the internet, of course shouldn't restart, and it also doesn't have to, because we'll not change its code dynamically. And you can basically tell NPM which kind of dependency this is. This does not make a huge difference, and you can omit this setting, but it helps you understand which package is used for what. Now you do add this by adding --save--dev. If you had just save like this would install it as a production dependency, so a package which we really use in our code and work with. And with this, we're indicating, this only adds something we use during development. There also is a third option, by the way. -g will not install it in this project, but globally on your machine, so that you can use it anywhere. Now, let's first of all install it with save-dev, like this, --save-dev. Now what this will do is, it will download it from the NPM repository and install it into this project. So not globally on your machine, but into this project. So now you see, you get a report here that it finished successfully what it did, and it gives you a couple of new things in your project. It gives you that node modules folder, the package log JSON file, and it updated the package.json file. There we see that the new dev dependencies section was added, and that stands for development dependencies. As I said, you can differentiate between different dependencies. We'll see production dependencies later too. And there you see that Nodemon was installed and which version was picked. Now, regarding that character here, well, this basically defines how this package will be updated if you rerun just npm install without defining an extra package name. Because this command standalone will simply go through all your packages mentioned in package.json and install them, and it would automatically pick a later version if available. But more on npm and packages can also be found in a separate module later in the course. So this is basically how we now installed this. And the question is, where is it installed? Well, that is the node modules folder. And actually, that is a huge folder, as you can tell. The reason for this is that, for one, we got Nodemon in there. If we look for N, we see it here. Now, this is basically the source code of the package, or the build version of the package we installed. And this package simply happens to have a couple of peer dependencies. You can see them here and here. So we got a bunch of dependencies in there, and these and their dependencies are also installed. That is why you quickly end up with quite a big node modules folder. But you can always delete that node modules folder if you need to free up space. Now you can't use that package, but you can then rerun npm install if you start working on that project again, and it will reinstall this package and all its peer dependencies, and therefore recreate the node modules folder. This is how packages work in node projects. So you need that node modules folder whilst you're using the packages. But if you're not working on the project, you can delete it if you want, if you need the free space. And then just remember to rerun npm install once you're working on the project again. The package log JSON file, by the way, just stores the exact versions I installed today, so that if you share your project with others, they can actually get these exact versions too, instead of the latest versions. But again, more on NPM in a separate module. So for now, we got that Nodemon package installed, and it will just work because it automatically installed all the dependencies this package needs in turn. So how can we now use it? Node1 is a utility tool, and it allows us to run our application, our Node application, through this package here, which will run Node app.js in the end, but which will also watch our files for changes and restart the process for us if we do change something. So we can simply change start here, so the Node app.js command, to Nodemon app.js. And this will look for a Nodemon tool, which it will find in this project because we installed it here. As a side note, if you were to run Nodemon app.js down there, you would get an error that this command is not found, because it's only installed in this project and not globally on your machine. But the terminal will try to find this globally. Here, it will work because this will look globally. So if you now run npm start, this will simply start the Node server and output some extra information. And if you now go to your routes.js file and edit something, let's just add an extra line, and you save that file, you see it's restarting. And this, of course, is very convenient because now we don't have to spend time on manually exiting and restarting. Now this is done for us.